Welcome or welcome back, everybody, to another exciting episode of Aaron's Opinion, the podcast for blind people, where we speak about critical issues in the blindness community and all other issues from across the universe and galaxy. So a few weeks back, Preston, the great Preston P. Daddy Gaylor, as he calls himself on Facebook, was telling me, Aaron, you should get in touch with this other musician named Bianca Blaque Diamond Johnson. And I reached out to you, I reached out to her, and it turned out that this is going to be a fascinating conversation. Not only are you a musician, but you're a motivational speaker. You're a writer. You're a poet. You're a this, you're that. And apparently I don't know how to spell black. So without further ado, who is Blaque Diamond? The whole life story. I'm going to mute my microphone and just let you talk just let you tell the whole story. So, okay, there you go. Go.
All right. So, hello, everyone. I am known as Blaque Diamond, which is an acronym of words that I feel describe me. So, as Aaron has so graciously introduced me, I am a songwriter, a motivational speaker, author, poet, and also an entrepreneur and student studying for my degree in human resources management. So I am totally blind and I have been for the past, coming up actually on 20 years. I lost my sight when I was 15 due to child abuse, by the hands of my mother. And due to the neglect of her getting me treatment in time, to actually save my vision, is the reason why I am blind today. So despite me being blind, I have been able to accomplish a lot due to just my hard work and my determination and just my ambitious, personality. Um, so growing up was very tough for me. I was abused from the day I was born. My mother was a single mom of five children. And so she took that anger and frustration out on me and my siblings, but me in particular, I experienced more of the abuse than my siblings did. To this day, I still question why. I don't know why. I don't have a relationship with my mother now. Even as an adult, once I grew up and moved out and got my own, I still try to establish that relationship with her and, try to have that mother-daughter bond, but it was just something that I eventually had to learn that, I couldn't force someone to be a mother who never wanted to be, and I couldn't force someone to love me who never did. Um, so eventually I just learned that I had to love her from afar. So, so basically the abuse went on for me until 19 years old. So from the day I was born until I was about 19. I was physically, psychologically, mentally, emotionally abused by my mother. She took advantage of, me once I went blind and, basically she started getting money for me. And when I would confront her about it, she would lie and say she didn't receive anything. So she was receiving child support and also SSI from me. So the moment that the doctor diagnosed me as being blind, like she didn't hesitate to go and sign me up for a check that I didn't know I was even receiving until I was about 19. Um, so, um, when I would have accidents or where I would run into things or things like that because I couldn't see, they would laugh at me and say that, I was pretending, I was looking for attention. I saw that door there or I saw that wall there. I just ran into it just because I wanted to, because I was looking for attention. And so, I had no family support at all, so I was left to deal with going blind on my own. I didn't go to school. I didn't do anything. I sat home day in, day out, listening to audiobooks and watching soap operas, for about 2 years. And then eventually, my mother found the School for the Blind for me in Spartanburg, South Carolina, where I'm originally from, Charleston, South Carolina. So the school was probably about a 2 hour drive from where maybe 3 hours from where I lived. And so I ended up going to the School for the Blind. Um for about a year, a little over a year. And so I learned, O&M skills, and I learned grade 2 Braille. I taught myself grade 1 off of a book that my sister, who was in the 4th grade at the time, brought home from school. They were learning about Louis Braille. And so the back of the paperback had like the Braille alphabet. And so I basically spent my days, memorizing what they felt like, what the letters represented, and all of that. So by the time I did go to the school, I knew grade 1 Braille. And so I learned contracted Braille, the grade 2. And so I learned that within 2 months. Um, and so the school actually hired me to be a Braille tutor for some of the younger children and just kids who were struggling with learning Braille. So that was actually my first job at 17 years old. And so I was working, at the school, and I also was an RA assistant for the den mother. And so I would help the younger children with, bathing and making sure, their clothes were clean and, taking care of their personal areas and making sure, things were clean and things like that. So that was kind of like my independence. I kind of felt a little bit of freedom while I was at the school because I was there during the week and then I came home on the weekends. So it was more sort of like kind of a boarding school, I guess you would say. Um, and so my mom didn't know I was working and making money. So I had a bank account and I was, saving my money. And when I would come home on the weekends, I would take my sisters and we would go to the store and, do different things like that because my mom was not feeding us. So, I would take my money and buy us food and things like that she was not aware of. So while at the school, I did at one point get up enough courage to tell one of the RAs, what I was going through at home, and um, she ended up wanting to adopt me, but my mom wouldn't allow her. And then it eventually got back to my mom that I was telling, people at the school what was going on in our household. So she ended up taking me out of the school. And so that little bit of independence I thought I had gained was snatched away. And so I sat at home again, doing nothing, for about another 5 months before my mom decided to up and leave and move to Charlotte, North Carolina. So, while I was at the blind school, because I had no prior high school, education, because I stopped school basically at the 7th grade, my mom so-called, was homeschooling us for my 8th grade year, the year I went blind. But practically we taught ourselves. She basically just got books and we were just assigned to do, work out of the books ourselves. So that was her version of homeschooling. And so I never got to graduate from 8th grade. So by the time I went to the blind school, I was 17 years old. So I should have been a junior in high school, but I had to start as a freshman because I had no prior high school. But because the school that I went to did not offer high school credits, when we moved to Charlotte and I began going to school there, I actually had to start the 9th grade over again. And by this time I was 18. And so because the school had no credits, I had no high school credits. It was embarrassing for me, because I was older than, all the kids in my class. But luckily for me, because I was small and I looked very young for my age, so the kids actually did not realize that I was much older than them. And when I did tell them that I was, they didn't believe me. And so I actually showed them my state ID that showed how old I was. And so at this school, it was not a blind school, so I went to a regular public school. Um, I was one of maybe 20 kids in the public high school. So it was a really good experience for me. It was definitely different from going to the blind school. And unfortunately for me, I felt very awkward at the blind school, I guess because I had never been around blind people before. And so it just didn't feel like I fit in there or that I belonged there. But when I went to public school, I felt like that is where I was supposed to be. And so I stayed at that school for, let's see, I think I started that school in March of 2008. And then February of 2009, I was snatched out of school once again. So I was kind of like in ninth slash 10th grade, by this time. And so by now I'm turning 19 years old. And so my mother decided that because she would no longer be able to receive the SSI checks for me anymore, due to Social Security wanting to have a face-to-face interview with me, because my mom, when I turned 18, my checks were supposed to go to me. But she went and told Social Security that I was not financially, able to maintain and take care of my own funds. So they believed her because she was my parent. But the following year, they were like, okay, we want to actually meet her and talk face to face and see for ourselves. So my mom knew at that point that the jig was up and that they were going to find out that she lied. So she ended up, just deciding to send me to live with my father in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I ended up moving to Raleigh in 2009. I lived there with my dad, but come to find out, my dad was actually homeless. He was addicted to drugs. So when I moved there, I had nowhere to live. We were living, in one woman's house that he was dealing with, and then she kicked him out. So then we didn't have anywhere else to live, and then we were another woman paid for a hotel for us to stay in for a couple of weeks, and then yeah, we were kind of just bouncing from here to there, trying to figure out, what to do. And so I had never really known my dad. I knew him by name, but he wasn't really active in my life. I remember briefly as a kid, maybe staying with him and my stepmom. They're not married anymore, but I still consider her my stepmom. A couple of times, maybe when I was like 3, and maybe another time when I was like 6. But other than that, I don't really have many memories of him as a child. And so basically, to me, he was a complete stranger. Biologically, he was my father, but I didn't know him as my father. Um, and so during my time of living with my father, um, I experienced more abuse. This time in the form of sexual abuse, and also domestic violence. And so my dad basically would try to hook me on drugs. And he was very possessive and very controlling and would not let me basically have a life outside of him. And so I dealt with that for about 3 months. And then finally one day, um, there was a situation where we were working at a job. We both worked at the same job, actually. And there was a situation where I had given him some money to buy a cane tip for me. Um, and so by mistake, I had accidentally given him the wrong denomination of money. So I had like $3 in one pocket, and then I had like $26 in another pocket. And so I accidentally gave him the $26 instead of the $3. And instead of him telling me, my mistake, he just took my money and went off with it. And so when I went to go buy the cane tip, I embarrassingly found out that I only had $3 and that wasn't the proper money. So I confronted him about it and, asked him to just give me the money back. And he just refused, and he said he didn't take it. And he ended up pushing me through a glass window. And so he took off running once he did that. Ambulance was called, the police was called. I was interviewed and asked questions and all of that, but I was very embarrassed about, just what had been going on for the past 3 months. So when they asked me the sensitive questions about whether there was sexual abuse or, was there domestic violence, I lied. I just, at that time, I was just so mentally just not there that I really just wanted to just leave. Like, I just didn't want to deal with and confront, everything that I had been going through. And so eventually I ended up, in a homeless shelter. Um, and so I was homeless there for about 6 weeks or so. So it wasn't a permanent, type of living situation. So I did still go to work every day. But like I had to, be out at a certain time and things like that. So I basically was on the streets. And so I ended up, once I left the shelter, I ended up just living in hotels, sleeping on park benches, subways. I mean, just wherever I could, sleep and work. And at that time, I was only making like $7.25 an hour, so that was minimum wage, which I think that's still actually minimum wage now. But I couldn't afford, to, you know, buy my own place, so I was just kind of just out there. And then I did end up trying to commit suicide. So I did attempt suicide at that time as well, and ended up in the hospital and psychiatric care and all of that, because I just was struggling with just all of what I had been through, up to that point to where I couldn't take it anymore. I just felt like there was no point in me being here anymore. Um, and so eventually I ended up, um, being able to afford to get my first place, which was a furnished studio apartment. It was a struggle maintaining and keeping the apartment, but I just refused to go back to sleeping on benches and just being homeless. So I did what I had to do to be able to keep the place. I did end up meeting someone while I was working, and we started dating. And, I thought he was my Prince Charming, my, savior from, all the bad things that had happened to me, and that, life from then on was going to be great. And that fairy tale was short lived, unfortunately. So I found out, I let him move in with me because he convinced me that, you know, it would save money, it would be just better for our relationship and all of this. And at that time, I was still 19 years old. I was naive. I had never dated. I had never been in a relationship. So to me, okay. And he was a little older than me as well. And so he used to basically take advantage of the fact that he was a little older than me. Not by much, about 6 years, but that was still, old enough. Um, and so basically I went from being in going through child abuse to going through sexual abuse to going into a domestic violence relationship where I was in for about 5 years. Just the beatings, just the sexual abuse, just, the everything, the demeaning of my character, and just the mental and psychological and emotional abuse that I went through with that relationship. um, I just felt like that was love. Like I didn't know that's all I had ever known my entire life was being abused by somebody, by my own parents. And so I didn't really know any better or any different, and I didn't think that I deserved better. Until one day I finally, woke up because it got to the point where I was contemplating murdering my abuser. And I just felt like the fact that I was going to that point, I, to me, I was thinking it was either going to be him or me. and I just didn't want him to take me out. So I ended up talking to a friend. Finally, throughout all of this that I was going through, I never told anybody what I was going through. I kept it all to myself, and I just suffered in silence. Because my whole entire life, that's what I was told to do. You know, the abuse I went through with my mom, you know, we were never allowed to tell anybody. We weren't ever allowed to talk about it. So that became my thing, where I just did not tell or talk about what I went through or what I was going through. And so eventually it got to the point where it was affecting me at work. I was having nervous breakdowns. I was just so miserable. Like, I didn't talk. Like, I was so meek and just shy that, you know, I would hardly talk to anybody. Because one, he wouldn't allow me to, and two, just I was just always so ashamed of just everything that I had been going through. And so eventually I did end up opening up to a friend, and she did end up helping me to leave the situation. So I ended up, once he went to work, I pretended to go to work as well one day. And instead of going to work, we ended up packing up all of my stuff and moving me out. And so I ended up getting a restraining order, um, and a, protection, order as well, just to keep him away from me. And so, you know, he still tried to, you know, just harass me and stalk me and everything after I left, because he told me, you know, if I'd ever had tried to leave him, he would make my life hell. And so eventually, once I got out of that situation, I felt like it was a new beginning for me, because I ended up moving with my friend, and I started, you know, saving my money while I was working, and then I was able to actually purchase my first home. And so I always looked at it as, you know, I had 6 months of being homeless, and I went from 6 months of being homeless to 6 months being a homeowner. And so I purchased my home, and that's kind of where my life started turning for the better. And so I finally, you know, got counseling. I finally was, you know, able to open up and tell what my father had done to me. And so he ended up, you know, being arrested and going to jail. And so he's currently in jail. Um, and so I felt like during that whole time, like, I had always been a believer in God, but I doubted God because of everything that I went through. And I felt like, you know, why was I going through all of this if God was real? But after I left the situation and I learned how to forgive all the people that hurt me, I finally learned, like, what all I went through, why I had to go through what I went through. And it was to make me into the person that I am now. And, you know, able to share my story without being shame and not feeling, you know, that, you know, I was a bad person and that's why all of these things happened to me. And so from then on, I actually, you know, started achieving my childhood dreams. And so I started, you know, writing and publishing my book. So in 2016, I actually submitted some of my poetry to an anthology for aspiring poets. And so three out of the four poems that I, you know, sent were chosen to be in the book. And so that's basically how I got my first start as being a published author. And in 2017, I actually self-published my first novel. And so since then, I've published about 13 books to date, spanning many different genres. And so some of the genres that I do write in are children's literature, poetry, um, contemporary fiction, romance, erotica, and nonfiction. So also I'm also a songwriter, so I've been writing music as well as long as I've been writing, actually. writing books. And so 2024 is actually when I started publishing my songs as music, to all the major platforms using AI. So I use AI vocals to help bring my lyrics to life. I purchase beats and instrumentals from producers, and I combine them with my lyrics and then the AI generated vocals to create my music. And so I'm using that to build my portfolio as a songwriter, so that I can write music for, artists who are looking for songwriters. Um, and so that's kind of me in a nutshell. Everything that I've been through definitely has made me a better person. At the time when I was going through the things, I felt like, life wasn't fair and, why me, why me? But I definitely feel like there was a purpose to my pain. And so I share my story with people as a motivational speaker and as a motivational writer, just to let people know that maybe going through what I've been through or know someone that has been through what I've been through, that, their pain isn't for nothing, and so I learned how to, transform myself from a victim to victorious. And so I use what I've been through as a way to help others to get through what they're going through or what they've been through.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You really could not have said it better yourself. Absolutely. There are several things that I certainly want to make note of here in everything you've just said.
Hmm.
Oftentimes, I'm going to tell you right from the bottom of my heart that this is podcast, as you know, Aaron's opinion is marked explicit for a reason. I talk from the bottom of my soul, and sometimes we have to cover these sad topics to make a point. The other point I'm going to make is when Preston P. Daddy, when Preston P. Daddy, when the P. Daddy, as we call him in the industry now, when P. Daddy tells you to interview somebody, he's right. That boy knows who to interview. Cause holy, I mean, all I can say from my heart to yours is, ooh la la. I mean, you don't mind if I get graphic with my language,
Yes,
right?
sir. Not a problem.
Okay, not a problem. Because when I heard your whole story, all I could think in my heart was, fuck me. I mean, this is a complete, I mean, I knew we were going to end up here, but ooh la la. The other thing that I can tell you as a Jewish guy is a lot of times we ask in my faith, we ask ourselves, why am I blind? Why am I this? Why am I that? Why has God put me through this punishment, or for what purpose is this? The purpose of it all, to at least what I have come to understand in my imagination, and again, this is an opinion show, so this is just my spirituality. The reasoning behind our suffering is that we are here on earth to learn. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, some of our soul journeys apparently need to be more troubled and need to be more learned than others to help other people to learn other things. So the answer is you went through that because you needed to learn, apparently. And I just mean that spiritually, obviously.
Hmm.
The other thing that I overwhelmingly notice is that this constant cycle of abuse that so many people are facing in our country, the patterns are so identical every time. It always starts with the mom. It always starts at childhood. The other thing that I consistently notice is always one child is always abused more than others. That's a feature of abuse. It
Hmm.
targets one person over other people, you know? And apparently, again, this is truly no insult to you as your character. But I just
Hmm.
have to say, my opinion of your parents, of your mother and your father, who, as you said, is now in jail, I think they were both very weak and very feeble in the sense of their spiritual makeup. I think that they were their character, their compass was a compass of feebleness and very very weak.
Hmm.
Apparently,
Yes.
and it also is overly apparent to me that there are so many people in society that just can't function. It's like you give these people a chance to get it right, right? You gave people a chance for a relationship or a this or a that, or come live with me, come do this. And when people can't function, it doesn't matter how good of a person you are, Bianca. The person is going to be a train wreck no matter what.
Yes.
Unfortunately, some people just can't function, and I would love to know why. That is the deepest question that I have in my heart and soul. If I'm able to do all these things, right? If I'm able to be a talk show host, be blind, have a congenital heart defect, let's see, run a teaching business, survive, handle my own finances, let's see, live in a crazy country, survive all these crazy people, how am I able to still keep functioning? You have to wonder, is it me or them? Where's the problem? You really have to intellectualize and wonder, what's going on here? Because it seems
Exactly.
like a very high. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, do my questions make sense to you?
Yes.
Because it seems like there's a very high percentage of people that are just unable to cope with life. Is what it seems like. The other comment that I'm going to make is that I have a real issue and a real disagreement with the fact that Social Security is being taken advantage of by too many people. Okay.
Yes.
And this is going to sound crazy, brace for impact. That was not actually your mother's fault. I actually, to a greater extent, blame the system that allowed the person to manipulate the funds and to move the money around. So that's kind of the government's fault for putting up with that. And unfortunately, a very high percentage of people do abuse the system. Another
Yeah,
thing.
because apparently when
Yeah,
I went off to the blind school, my
sure.
mother was supposed to report that I was no longer in the household
Oh,
full
there's no way she's
time,
reporting that. No, no
and
way in
she
heck.
didn't. So came to find out when I finally was able to start getting my SSI check in my name, they took
Mhm.
it away due to overpayment when I was the minor and she was getting the check for me. So they ended up taking it away from me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they would have to. They would have to suspend funds to prevent your mother from manipulating
No,
funds
no,
and
no, no.
then.
I mean,
Oh,
once I was an adult and they
right.
got switched over to me,
Hmm.
because once I was homeless, they felt like, okay, she can manage her own money now. um, so because of the time when I was 16 and underage, and she was receiving the funds for me, but because she did not report that I was at the blind school for majority of the month, basically I was only home for 2 days. She was supposed to have that transferred to me, and because she did not, and she did not report it to them, they ended up taking it away from me due to overpayment of that
Hmm.
period of when I was not in the household.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they do that. I mean that's something personal about your situation, but that does make sense why they would do that. I mean, yeah. I mean, it's a mess, but I understand that. Yeah.
So yeah, it was,
It's crazy. All craziness. All ridiculous. And the only thing you can do is keep being a success story, which you apparently are. So you know, let's dig into some of these. So you're a songwriter now. With all of
yes.
your persona and your personality, you would probably write some really beautiful songs. So I think you're the person, if my memory serves me well, I think you're the person that said that you're not the singer. You don't actually sing, but you write music. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Do you want to try singing right now to see if you can sing or cannot sing?
Oh no, I will not embarrass myself like that.
Oh,
That is not a talent that
oh.
God has blessed me with,
I don't know. I thought
unfortunately.
after everything we covered, I thought you'd want to break the tension by either proving that you can't sing or because some people would want to test you. They would want to say, well, let's see if you really can't. Because too many times in life, people always ask me, well, Aaron, can you do it? Can you do it? Can you do it? Well, you know what? Nobody ever tests you to prove you can't do something. Have you ever thought of that?
Yes, I can shower sing, most definitely. I could be the next Beyonce, but outside of the shower, no.
Oh,
Just
oh,
singing is
okay.
not my thing.
Oh, I see.
Writing is my thing, and I'm gonna
So
stick to that.
where on earth did you find, where on earth did you find your ability to write music? And so so since you don't sing the songs, what exactly do you write and how do you know it's great?
Okay, so I've been writing since I was 11. And I'm going to tell you something. So when I was a kid, my brothers and I, we all were into writing. Stories, music, whatever. That was basically our therapy to get us through, what we were going through. And so at one point I wanted to be a rapper. So my name was going to be Little B.
In more
And
ways
I
than
was
one.
a
Boy,
huge fan
I'm really
of.
sitting here. I'm really sitting here scratching my head. I wonder where you would get that idea. Jeez, what is that? What is that from the? What do you mean? You mean from the abuse part, the family problems part? Wait, which problem inspired that one? I really have to struggle.
And so I was a huge fan of Missy Elliott. So that's kind of where, I don't know, my, I guess, music style or whatever came from.
Okay.
And that was before I went blind.
Hmm.
So after I went blind, I felt like, okay, yeah, that is never going to happen because, of course, I had never heard of anybody being a musician who was blind or anything like that because this is a new life for me
Right.
at 15 years old. So then my writing went from music more so to more poetry. And so that's kind of where I focused more on more stories and poetry. So I kind of put the songwriting to the side because, yeah, my dream of becoming, the next hip hop thing was just not going to happen. Um, and so just over the years, I had written songs and just, filed them away, archived them, and never kind of did anything with them. Um, but I was looking for a way how to promote myself as a songwriter so that I can write music for others. So when the great idea of AI came about, I was like, so I can actually generate vocals, so I don't actually have to sing or pay anybody to, do vocals to my music. Okay, sounds good. So I just kind of played around with it a little bit, and I'm like, oh wow, this actually sounds like a person. Like this sounds like a real life person. So that kind of started my journey with publishing my music. And so I created my own little, AI artist, and I'm always honest with people and let them know that the vocals are AI generated. They're not me, they're not a real person, but I did write the songs and I do pay for the melodies and the beats and the music. And I just combine them with the AI vocals.
Yeah, I think that's super artistic and super cool. That when when you use AI properly, it's really cool. It definitely fits when it's done appropriately. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I do think it needs to be used at the right time and in the right way. But hey, if you tell people that it's AI first, if you mark the songs as artificial intelligence, if you're buying the tracks, if you're spending your money on setting it up the right way, fine, more power to you.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I know I'm repeating myself, but so are these songs on Spotify by any chance?
Yes, they are.
Okay. You
So they're under
definitely need to
my.
definitely send me your Spotify page for all of your
Okay.
music that you've generated because as I might have mentioned in the past when we were speaking, and again, I speak to many great people, so I forget what bits of information I tell each person. But I do have a playlist here called Aaron's Opinion Select, and it's where I've interviewed other blind musicians, or anyone with a disability who is a songwriter or musician. Their music gets added to the list, and it's a really incredible list that I've compiled on Spotify. So definitely send me your Spotify, and you'll be added into my global list for sure to get people to
Definitely.
download your stuff. It's super cool. So how would you describe the flavor of your music, by the way?
Okay, so I do more right under, R&B. I do gospel slash inspirational and pop. I have dabbled in hip hop a little bit, and I'm actually working on an album that is fully hip hop. I
Hmm.
did actually posted a song that I wrote back in September or so, like on social media and like especially like in a lot of the blind groups, and like, oh my gosh, people went crazy over it. And it was actually a hip hop song. And they were like, I'm not really into hip hop, but I like this song.
Yeah.
Because it was a song I named Blind, Bad and Bossy. And
Blind,
so
bad, and bossy.
basically, it was kind of my feelings, especially, when I was in the dating world, and
Mhm.
how, men would perceive me as someone who's blind, that I was looking for, somebody to take care of me and all of this. And I'm like, no, I don't need you. Like I can take care of myself, or I've had people say, "Oh, you're pretty to be blind," or you don't dress like a blind person and things like
Well,
that. So
how does
that
a well
song,
how on earth is a blind well wait how does a blind person dress?
I don't know. I
I don't know either.
guess I'm very fashionable, and so I'm very into
Wait,
style,
no, 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 no,
clothing.
you're too blind to be fashionable. That we can't have that.
And so that's what inspired, that song.
Uh-huh.
So like people were just like, "Oh wow, like I can really relate to that." And so hip hop writing's kind of really not my thing because I'm not really a hip hop listener.
Right.
Um I'm mostly into listening to gospel and inspirational R&B and then pop.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to do this strictly hip hop album actually to still tell my life
Mm-hmm.
story actually in songs.
Right. Right.
And that was actually inspired by my significant other, actually. He was like, I think you really should, do a hip hop album, in a kind of like a storyteller type with different songs depicting different things that you've went through in your life, telling your story.
Mm-hmm. Right, right. So can you kind of remind me again, because I struggle, I do forget the so what are the technical differences in one sentence between like hip hop, R&B, pop, like kind of paint the picture so my mind can kind of click into it a little more and remember the key difference between, hip hop, pop, R&B, like what's the technical difference between those?
So when it comes to hip hop is more rap, so rapping,
Okay.
type music. R&B is singing. So more, soulful singing, that type. Pop more singing, but more you can tell the style is different, especially with the music. So even some of my songs I've played around with them and, use the same lyrics but put different genres and it
Mm-hmm.
creates such a different sound, especially like when it comes to pop because pop uses and a lot of it's due to the instruments used when creating the music,
Mm-hmm.
the actual melodies. So certain type of music use certain, like, with more country music you hear more guitars, more, things like that. So with more hip hop you hear more drums, more bass, things like that. So the different styles of music consist of different types of instruments.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Very good. Very good. So what would you say over the years has been I mean, you can just look at your analytics over time, but if you're producing all this AI music, right? One question that just popped up in my brain is, so then does that mean though that when the music is downloaded around the world, how do you keep track of your listener base? And have you ever found, um, other AI musicians? In other words, have you noticed that there is a growing trend, or have you noticed an industry of other songwriters who also generate AI content from around the world? What have you noticed about the AI music scene these days?
It is definitely popping. I actually belong to quite a few um, AI music groups and just, songwriter groups in general.
Right.
And then some of them may have like a little, certain category for AI music. So AI music is very, very, popular. What I distinguish myself from people who actually just use AI completely for every part of their music generation, um, I feel like I stand out because I only used AI for vocals. The music
Huh.
is purchased by an actual audio engineer.
Okay.
The lyrics are written by me. So I don't use
Right.
AI to write any lyrics or
Sure,
anything
sure.
like that.
And this is a very subtle thing. So you're actually putting forth a tremendous effort here. So you use your own brain, you come up with your own imagination, you use your imagination to basically
Hmm.
tell the AI what to sing. And then you basically buy music that supports what you want the AI to sound like
Hmm.
when they sing what you wrote.
Yes.
That's a lot of moving parts. Can't you just learn how to sing? Because it would just be
I
easier.
wish it was that
It would
easy.
just be a lot. It would be a lot less work for you if you would just learn how to just take singing. Come on, it's not that hard. Take, come on, just wake
I
up one
wish
day.
it was that easy because, yeah, it's definitely, I feel like if
Right.
all of your music is totally AI generated, then yes, you're not putting as much work in as
Mm-hmm.
someone actually. And people, musicians themselves, like they're up in arms about people using AI music, and they're,
My
you're
thing
not
is,
a
it
real
has to be
artist.
done. My
They're
thing
not.
is, it has to be done properly. You see, there's an appropriate use and an inappropriate use. You're doing it appropriately. The
Mhm.
problem is that too many people want to just completely allow AI to
Do
redefine their
everything.
spirituality and redefine their character. No, you do the opposite. You inject your character into the AI. And then from there, that's how you tell the AI what to portray. That's fine. As
Yes.
long as it's marked and categorized properly. So is there a chart on Spotify for just AI? Like, is there an AI chart? I think there would have to be an AI chart
Not to mine. I'm not sure. I actually
because
have not
it's
really
not really, it's
investigated.
fair. Here's my thing with it, right? It's fair to an extent, but then it's not fair because you could have somebody else listen to one of your AI songs and then do a vocal cover with their own voice. And then that's not quite the same thing. That's not quite fair, you know? So I think there has to be an AI chart where they rank you amongst others who produce AI. That's the only way to level that, I think. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
That
Because
I'm not sure because for me, it's more so of building songwriting
sure.
portfolio. So it's not for me to be like, oh, this is me. I want to start performing on stage. No,
No.
it's to advertise my songwriting.
Hmm. Absolutely. Hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Very, very good. Very, very good. All right. All right. So where's your audience from, right? When you look at the people who download your songs, who's downloading you these beautiful AI songs?
Definitely, I would say more so in the U.S.
Hmm.
Um, it doesn't show me like particular states or anything like that, but it definitely is more so the US. And then I really don't pay attention to more of the stats because that's not really
Hmm.
what I'm looking for.
Mm.
I'm using it as a platform, as a way to actually get my music out there as a songwriter and actually get to work with artists who are looking for songwriters. And so for me, it's more so about the portfolio, not so more about the stats. And so I'm actually planning on starting my own seller site on Fiverr because that's actually where I've purchased a lot of my different aspects of when it comes to like my books and things. But I actually want to start my own page there as a songwriter, and I can actually use the music that I've already created to basically build my platform there to advertise myself as a songwriter. And that was the
Yeah.
whole purpose of using AI to do that.
That's really cool. That's really, really cool. And then from there, people could simply find the music, buy it, and then
Well,
use.
so they would actually be able to just listen to snippets of it. And then, basically they would be able to tell me which genre they want a song in, what they want the song to be about. And then I can
Hmm.
write the song and send them their song.
Right, right. That's that's interesting. Okay, so that's really creative. So you would use the natural uses of Fiverr to be able to sort of build songs for people if they come up to you and say, "Hey, I need a song."
Yes.
You know what
Because
I
I've
wonder?
actually
Sure.
had that done before, way back, a couple of years ago,
Right.
and I felt like I dropped the ball when it came to that because I actually had a band reach out to me through Instagram, and they were like, they've seen a lot of my poetry because I used to post a lot of my poetry and stuff on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
And so they were like, we want to see if you can write a song for us. And I was just like, I'm not really, I was just kind of like, nah, And I never forgot that situation and how like that could have been my opportunity right there, and I totally dropped the ball. So I said, if I ever got another situation or opportunity to advertise my songwriting, I was not going to basically drop the ball again. And so that's why I'm pushing and working so hard and, crafting and critiquing and, just making sure that I'm producing the best that I can,
Mm-hmm.
because I just want to be able to find that opportunity, that person that is like, "Oh, I like that. Can you write me a song like that?"
Right, right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I'm sure that if I said, hey, can you write me an AI song that could be a theme song for my podcast? I'm sure you could easily do that,
Oh,
right?
yes. And I
Oh, I would
literally
love
can write
that.
a song in an hour. Sometimes it takes me about a day, but literally, like, I can write a song in an hour, a whole song with, two verses, the chorus, the bridge, the outro, like, in literally an hour. Like,
Absolutely.
that's how
I
fast
would
I
love
can
a
write
beautiful song that encapsulates what we do here at Aaron's Opinion, which is basically help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow. That's
it. Hmm.
basically the slogan. That's what I say is that the conversations we're having now are to help you today, but they really are to help somebody else in the future, right? Paving it forward for people in the future. That's truly the purpose. Um,
Hmm.
but really good, really,
I
really
can
good. Well,
definitely work on that for you. Just send me that information, and I can guarantee you I can get you
and
a song.
I'll make you sweat. Don't you worry. I'll make you sweat. I have a very eclectic taste and texture that I would be looking for. Kind of more of a classical song, almost the use of orchestral instruments, but also beautiful, but also soft and strong at the same time and noticeable all at the same time. But we'll definitely cover that. That's going to be that's super cool. And I think when you do it properly, I think it's a beautiful art form and a beautiful stretch of your
Yes.
imagination. So,
Yeah, because writing has always been my thing. Like I've always, and that's what I've always told people that said, "Oh, you're not true artist if you don't do this and that." And I'm
right.
like, for me, writing is a natural thing. I've been writing since I was
Mm-hmm.
11. I'm not just now just popping up on the scene. It's like, "Oh, yes, I'm a songwriter." Like, no, I've been doing this
Right.
for what, 24 years now.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right.
So this isn't new to me. And then I have published books to speak,
Let's talk about books.
for my, talents.
Sure. Let's talk about the books for a bit. So you have all these books. Let's transition over to that. So the
Hmm.
books. All right. So it sounds like you're also all over the place with your writing. So what books have you published already? How does that all work?
Okay, so I self-publish. So basically, I, basically take on the expense of publishing, editing, formatting, all of that. So I do have a graphic designer. She kind of does all of my book formatting and my illustrations for children's books, and she also does my cover designs. So she's kind of like an all-in-one person for me when it comes to my book publications. I usually edit my books myself, and then I also pay for an editor once I've edited. Well, I use like your standard, spell check and all of that with the Microsoft Word program and Grammarly and all that. And then once that's completed, this edit, then I edit it. And then once that edit is complete, then I send it off to someone else to be edited before I publish.
Right.
Um,
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
so I work hand in hand with my graphic designer to, and I tell her exactly what I want, and then she produces, what I want as far as my covers and illustrations and things like that. But yes, I do write in many different genres. That's just my ability to be able to, you know just be able to tell stories in different, ways. So, I do poetry and I do children's literature because I'm a mother. So, reading was always my first love. And
Absolutely. That's really
so
good.
I wanted to incorporate that, especially once I became a mom, with my own child, to love reading. And so
Really
I'm like, why
good.
not? I'm an author, children's literature, promote literacy in the youth.
I support it. It's so
So
important
yeah.
these days. So, so important. It does seem like, not to haunt back to it, but it does seem like people who go through the abuse that you've been through in the past, it does seem like one of the features of it too is that they always find an outlet. They always find a safe place in their own life to
Mhm.
find an activity that they're able to progressively do. That's another feature of that. So, I mean, I'm sorry, obviously you've been through what you've been through, but in a odd way, what you went through built you up to who you are as the person now, you know.
Yes,
So,
definitely.
so completely. So really good. I think one of the most subtle forms of literature ever is, of course, children's literature, because to capture the mind of a child, to hold a child's attention span is very difficult. God knows you can barely hold my attention span with most books. So how do you capture a child's mind? And what I really mean is, how do you basically write something that's entertaining enough to a child, but still serious enough to convey the message? How does that work?
So with me, most of my books have been more on the educational side.
Mm-hmm.
I have been writing books based on my son's development.
Right.
So my son is 6 now. So I started publishing when he was a toddler, as far as books go. So I've published 4 children's books to date. And so my first book was called Poetry for Tots, and it was basically a book of poetry. Short poems for children, but it was dealing with being a toddler. So, learning your ABCs and, taking baths and, eating and learning how to potty train and, things like that. So all things dealing with being a toddler. And then
Right.
so as he got a little bit older, I came out with more poetry for tots. So it was more on the educational, but more dealing with like learning numbers, counting, learning your ABCs, learning your body parts, things like that. So those poems kind of dealt more with, as they're getting older and learning themselves and things like that. And then my third book, was called Animal Alphabet A to Z. And so it was a
Mm-hmm.
book about, learning the alphabet and associating an animal with that alphabet, and then also learning a fun fact about that animal.
Right.
Um, and then so the fourth book is I Can Be, which is book 1 of 2. I'm still actually working on the second book, and it's also so he's at that age now where they're asking what do you want to be when you grow up.
Mm-hmm.
So this book is basically showing the child. So all of the illustrations in the book are children dressed as the occupation. And
Right.
so then I have like a fact about that occupation. So
Right.
just teaching them about the different occupations they could be, when they grow up.
Really good. What does your son want to be when he grows up?
He wants to be a police officer.
That's great. I salute that so much. What do you really think about that? I'm sure you actually probably
I'm
in some
scared.
philosophy, I'm sure you have some conflict. I'm sure you have a mixed feeling, right? You probably have mixed feelings about law
Yes, I
enforcement,
do. I'm
right?
like, you don't want to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something. Why a
Come
police
on. I mean, come on.
officer?
NBA player, basketball player,
You know?
really?
And he's tall, and people say that, and I'm like, no, I don't want him to be the stereotypical, what you would see an African American boy. So I
Right.
want him to know that he has options, so he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to. Now, if that's what he wants to do, fine. But I
Look,
don't want to conform him to feeling like, oh, okay, because you're African American, you should play basketball,
right.
or you
No, and
should
I
be a
just
rapper,
so
or you
so
should,
to so to clear so I just need to clarify what I meant. What I meant was a lot of children like to think about playing sports. That's all I meant. Right. I
No,
certainly
my
was.
son is actually not a sports child.
No, no, no. That's good, but I just have to clarify.
He's
I was
more of a
not.
gamer.
That's that's good.
He wants to
No,
be
but
a YouTuber too, as well. Like
oh,
he's
okay. No, no,
begging
no.
for
But
a YouTube
right,
channel.
but Bianca, what all I meant was I didn't mean that your son should aspire to play sports because he's African American.
Oh no, no, no!
What
I
I
was
meant was
saying that
many
because people
children.
say that about him
Ah,
because he's
okay.
tall for his
Oh,
age.
okay, okay, okay. I just needed to be respectful and clarify that I didn't mean it in the sense of he's African American, so he should play sports. What I meant is many children, whether they're black or not, say that they want to be a sports person. So that's all I meant. No, thank you for the clarification. And I think
Yes.
that if he, if he's obviously he's a great person like you, you're a great person, you're a wonderful mother, he's lucky to have you. So, I mean, I think if you bring him up the right way and teach him to be a great police officer that people will look up to in the community, then you should also remind him that as long as he doesn't mind being guilty for the rest of his life, because that's what you are for the rest of your
Mhm.
life, as long as as long as you don't mind ruining your own life, and as long as you don't care about destroying your own life but helping somebody else, that's all fine. Um,
Yes.
I will tell you that the feeling I have absorbed, and obviously I'm not able to get into the personalities, but the feeling that I've absorbed from people who've done that line of work is that they think, well, they go into it thinking, oh, this is great, this is fabulous. But then the problem ends up being that you have to deal with so much negativity that in the end you realize that society is basically wrecked. And that
Yes,
basically destroys you.
definitely.
So I'm not, I'm not convinced. I mean, do I think it's fabulous? Yeah. I mean, if I was cited, would I do that job? Yeah, no problem. I would have no problem doing that job. But, but then again, I would also intellectualize and wonder, well, why do you want to destroy your own life in the name of helping somebody else? I mean, it's really fascinating. But no, but there's a lot that can be done. As he grows up, when he's an adult, he'll discover there's a lot of different things that quote unquote a law enforcer can do many things, not just the stereotypical policing, but they can work for companies, work maybe in the military, maybe for private company. I mean, there's a lot of different facets to that. So it's not
Yeah.
just one job for sure. That's really interesting. Really good. Yeah. Cool. Cool. Okay. So you write for children and then you also write for adults. So, let's
hmm
really go into the deep end here as if we weren't there already. So what can you tell me about, erotica? You really, you really like the erotica, right?
So this
I thought
is
you said you
actually,
wrote that.
yes, I've written my first erotica book.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually is going to be a three-part series. At first it actually started from a poem because I write erotic poetry.
Okay.
And so basically I took the concept of the office romance, the boss and secretary and, all of that, and created from that poem an actual erotica novel. And I've had very good reviews from it. It's definitely very graphic,
Are
very
you sure? Are
detailed.
you sure this isn't? Are you sure this is not a reflection of your audience? Are you sure? Are you sure you aren't just attracting creeps? I mean, like,
I actually used to post my erotica poetry, and because of that, I would get, messages and stuff from people, so I stopped. So I
oh,
stopped.
well, that's on you. Have you know what, Bianca? You have yourself to blame. You can only blame you for that call. Okay, if you're gonna write that, that's
Tearing
what's
my
gonna
art.
happen.
But yeah, I didn't realize that that's what was going to come from it. So I was like,
Bianca, come on. Let me level with you. Okay. I realized it and I never write erotica. Okay. I realized it without writing it. Okay. Of course you're going to have weirdos if you're going to write that.
well, now I don't because, I don't, people don't know me personally, because I write
hmm
under my pen name. So they have no way of like contacting me. But yeah, when I used to post on Facebook and to get people's, because that's how I actually used to do my work, like when I
hmm
would, whether it was erotica or whatever, I was writing a book or whatever, I would post snippets like on social media just to get people's feedback and see how they felt about it, if they liked it, this and that. And so that's what helped me to actually go ahead and get into publishing my actual work because of the
hmm
feedback I was getting from people.
Okay.
Because I was like, it's one thing to like your own stuff, but you need to test the people because they're
hmm
going to be the ones reading and they're going to be the ones buying. And
hmm
so that's how I used to do. I would, just drop snippets and yeah, I got a lot of good feedback. So, that encouraged me to just go ahead out there and start doing my publishing. So I'm actually working on book number 14, right now. And
Right.
actually, it's a nonfiction book. So
hmm
this would be my first nonfiction full book.
Yeah.
I co-authored nonfiction books, about four of them. but this would be my first time writing a nonfiction book.
It's very
And
good.
basically, it's about everything I just shared in this podcast.
Oh, okay. Do you hear yourself basically saying, why should anybody watch this video or listen to this? Just get it on book form. Just pick it up at Barnes and Noble on the way home. Okay, like who needs this?
Yes, and it will be in audio as well. Like
Oh,
I've definitely loved that. So I have two books as audiobooks right now. And so I see a lot of people actually enjoy that. So
that's
definitely
wonderful,
from
Bianca.
now on, that's my goal. Because my
Hmm.
first books I was publishing, there were just ebooks and paperbacks. But now I see that people really love having the audio, and I actually love listening to the audio versions of my books as well. So I'm like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to make sure it's in the budget to get audiobooks. And
Well,
every book I
you know
publish from
what?
now
Since
on.
you're so good with AI, you can just use your own software and get the AI to do it. You can just get the AI to read it with an AI voice.
So with publishing audiobooks, you cannot use AI.
Oh, really?
They do have AI detectors, and
Mm-hmm.
especially to get your books like on Audible,
Mm-hmm.
iTunes, yeah, it cannot be AI.
So, okay, so will your book be on Audible?
Yes, they are
Ooh.
actually already.
Oh.
It's
Okay.
like the erotica
Send
book
me.
and the poetry book, that I won first place last year for.
Mm-hmm.
That is those two are audible books.
Okay. So, but what about the nonfiction book? Is that one on
That's the
Audible?
one I'm writing right now.
Okay. So definitely when you get that nonfiction on Audible,
Yes,
I definitely want to give
definitely.
that a play. That's going to be amazing. Yeah,
And I
absolutely.
have an awesome narrator. I love her. So
Oh,
I
who is
have the
it?
same person that does all of my audiobooks.
Yeah.
Um, so she'll be doing this one as well once I'm done with it.
Cool. Who's narrating?
So her name is, well, she goes by a different name when she does my erotica. But her name is Joyce Lyrics.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So with the erotica, because she also narrates other books like Christian books, different things
Mm-hmm.
like that. So she goes by a different name.
I certainly hope so.
Yes.
That's very intriguing. Well, this is really, really deeply fascinating because a lot of blind people here in the Aaron's Opinion family are wondering how to get their books in Audible and how to get their books. But, a lot of people ask this question, and there's a lot of people who have a book idea, but they don't quite know how to get it all the way into audio format. So I think this is really good. Really, really good for
And
you.
I actually
Yeah.
found her from Fiverr. That's where I get everybody from.
Mm-hmm. So, in other words, so you basically just like hired this lady to
Yes.
and then Audible allows that? Like I was always under the impression that Audible, Amazon
Mm-mm.
provided the actors to narrate.
No, you can
Oh.
hire your own.
Oh, interesting. And then you submit it. Like how does the process work in the end? How do you actually get it all
So
the way to the
basically,
platform?
the process is, so when she narrates the book, she has to narrate each particular part, like your front matter, whether you got dedication, all of those are separate tracks.
Mm-hmm.
Chapters, separate track.
Right.
You know, back end, separate tracks. And then you upload each individual track. You have to basically go in and tell, the system how many tracks you're uploading, and then you have to put a title for each track and then upload that corresponding track. And then once Audible, approves it and everything, it's all merged together. So that's why whenever you get a book that has multiple chapters and you go into like the navigation menu, it shows like, chapter one, chapter two, and you can click on a particular chapter that you want to read.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That's because it's all individual tracks.
Oh yeah, all stapled together. Exactly. Yeah. It's
Yes.
very similar to podcasting. The process is very similar. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really, really cool. So what are some of the features of this nonfiction book? Because I mean, the fiction stuff that you do is incredible, but the nonfiction truly embodies your person. Like that's the real you. So like, what can you really say about some of the stories you're going to tell in the nonfiction part? What do you think?
So my book is called Stolen Innocence, A Survivor's Journey. And so
Mhm.
basically it's my story of, being a victim of sexual and you know, all the abuse that I went through, that's kind of where my story starts.
Hmm.
Because I feel like it's a very significant part of my life.
Hmm.
Yes, the abuse of my mother was definitely, very significant as well. And I kind of briefly talk about, I don't go into details about what I went through, but I kind of briefly talk about a little bit. But that kind of is the turning point of my adulthood, is when I
Hmm.
was sent to live with my father. And so I talk about that situation, and I also talk about the domestic violence relationship I was in after that for 5 years. And then I also talk about just my strength and just my, how I overcame everything, how, I was able to, despite everything I've been through, been able to be successful at, purchasing a home and, working and living despite all of this, being blind as well. And doing it all on my own.
Really good. Really, really excellent. So it's a reflection on your willingness to succeed and your willingness to just sort of basically remember the past and move forward in the future.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And so
Absolutely
it's meant
beautiful.
to inspire and, motivate others who may have been through the same thing. And, another big part that I talk about in the story is just being, a victim of incest, because that's what it was.
That
That
is
was my
such a that is
biological
such a
father.
disgusting that problem disgusts me. It is such a disgusting problem. The worst of
Yes.
it is you're not the only one. That's the problem. That
Mhm.
happens, unfortunately,
A
this
lot.
happens
Too
to
many.
a lot of people. A lot of people go through that. Now, I mean, my life is not perfect. Okay. Thanks to God, for whatever reason, God didn't put me through that problem. Now, God gave me other problems to deal with, but not that one. And that's a vicious, vicious problem that destroys people. The problem with that issue of incest is that it permanently damages people. That's
Yes.
why it's bad.
And
So
so
and
my book covers a
mhm,
lot. It covers domestic violence, sexual abuse,
yeah,
suicide, all of that, suicide, attempts and things like
sure.
that. So I do also include, like,
Hmm.
hotline information at the end,
Okay.
for people. And then I also include a 30-day, survivors, 30-day survivors positive affirmation journal,
Mm, that's
of
interesting.
positive affirmations that I've created, just, to help,
Hmm.
because that's the point. Is, yes, I'm telling my gritty story and it's very graphic and
Right.
detailed, but the purpose is to be unashamed to share my story.
That's a really beautiful part of I think you're a really beautiful person to be able to do that, because I've had a lot of other people on the show in the past who've been through similar things to you, unfortunately, and they're not quite as upbeat as you are, considering, and I don't take this lightly at all, considering everything you've overcome. You're awfully open about it, and which is kind of strange, actually, because most people are a little bit more reserved about it when they've been through it. But you're very graceful. You're just very graceful and matter of fact about it. Like, here's what happened in the past. Here's where I am now. Here's where
Trust
I'm
me, it
going
took me
tomorrow.
a long time to get here.
Well,
It
I
took
think you're
me
doing
a
great.
long time to get here. Lots of therapy, lots of
Yeah,
self
I think that's
care,
important.
self love, and
And let's not forget it's important to go to therapy. And by the way, I think everybody needs therapy, especially successful people. All people need therapy. They just don't take it.
hmm
I think everybody needs to be able to have conversations, which is what the art of podcasting is about too. It's about the fact that we all need to just talk about stuff to feel better and to help others. And that's really the value behind it all, is that we're using this audio to give someone some hope, and that's
yeah,
that's really important. And to also make it okay to talk about it. And that's also very,
exactly.
very
And I
subtle
think
and very interesting.
another reason why I'm so open about it is because God allows me to be open about it. I wasn't always open about it. I was very ashamed. And so, yes, I did not talk about it. I did not. And anytime
Hmm.
I did, like, emotionally, I would crack. And
Right.
so the fact that I can talk about it without crying, without getting emotional, that lets me know that I am healed.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was not healed, I was not able to talk about it. And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that is my purpose, and God has given me the ability to write and the
Mm-hmm.
story to tell to help others.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's really cool. That's really, really, really good. You're just very approachable. There's something just very understandable about the way you deliver. You know, your deliverance of knowledge is just very, very easy to understand and very direct. Like, here's what happened. Blah, blah, and blah. Bang, bang, bang. But now, you know, which is very special. You know, I don't think, you know, I think that you should celebrate that about you, because I think that's your gift, is your ability to tell the truth and your ability to deliver information, you know.
Yes, definitely. And
That's
now my
very
goal is
unusual.
to actually have this book released actually by my birthday, which is in September, but definitely in time
Hmm.
for domestic violence awareness, which is in October.
Right. Right.
So,
Although I have to say, as a podcaster, as the host, I have to say we need to be aware of these problems every month and every day.
definitely.
That always cracks me up. How they always say, like, the other one that's funny is they always say, like, October is meet the blind month, or such and such a thing, or this month is such and
Yes,
such month,
White
you know.
King, yeah, Day and all of that, yeah.
Yeah, well, then the problem with doing that, the problem with doing that is not the good intention. The problem with doing that is that all the other days of the year you forget to meet that person. So you forget about
Exactly.
it. So I think that has to be an everyday. We have to be aware and cognizant of it all. Super good.
Yes,
Super,
definitely.
super good. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, and I'm sure that you have some questions. We have another about 15 minutes. And then I think we have covered all the ins, outs, lefts, rights, hots, colds, and in betweens of this blast of an adventure today. But I'm sure, Bianca, that you have a lot of questions about this Aaron's opinion guy, this Aaron Richmond guy. So, you know, and trust me when I tell you that I've been through it all, and I'll answer any question that comes into your heart and soul. So to really make me sweat, to really get under my skin, to see if I'm worth my salt as a podcaster, what do you really want to know about me?
Okay, so what inspires you to create this podcast?
I was inspired about 5 years ago to get into podcasting. I was spending an enormous amount of time teaching online, which is what I still do today for my main work. And I was listening to a lot of podcasts around the blindness space. They were not open to my opinion. I was giving opinions, I was talking, I was trying to communicate with them, and they chose to not listen to me. And that really pissed me off. That really did create a problem, because I have a real problem in society when people are unwilling to learn and unwilling to listen. Being unwilling to listen is completely different from disagreeing with people. Being unwilling to listen is a problem, and disagreeing is generally not a problem. That's my perception. And I can't shut up, and I love talking to microphones, and I love recording myself. So what I did, Bianca, was I noticed that there was a lot of silly and cute questions that people ask on Facebook groups around the blindness community. So what I would do, just for fun, is I would take one of those questions, I would read it with the voiceover, and then I would just create an audio file right on my phone. And I would say, "Hi, Bianca, today I noticed that you asked about such and such in the group. Here's my opinion." And then I would PM it back to that person. And then I kept on doing that over and over again until it occurred to me that that group of people is an audience and they keep listening to me. So then I realized, wait a minute. Well, that's a podcast. The podcast has gone over many cycles and many forms and iterations and versions and blow ups and blow ins and lefts, rights, and in betweens. But that's how we got here today. What inspires me the most is that I have the privilege to connect with great people like you and help you to help one person today and a million people tomorrow. There you go.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking about getting into podcasting myself. The idea keeps coming up.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do because I actually have a song that I created called
Mm-hmm.
Blind Girl Magic. And it's an inspirational song
Ah.
for, blind women to, feel
Mm-hmm.
good about themselves. And it was actually
Right.
very popular when I did post it. And so I've thought of creating a podcast called Blind Girl Magic. And I want to talk about, women stuff,
Mm-hmm.
self-care, blindness related things, just kind of, I haven't settled on the idea yet, but it's still an idea. I just don't know
Mm-hmm.
how to go about it as far as starting a podcast and what equipment is needed and what, just, and I want it to be something that's consistent. So I don't want to, started, and then like, okay, a month later,
You
oh
know,
no, it
funny thing
falls
is
by the
most people only produce 8 episodes and then they lose interest. And we have nearly 300 here at Aaron's Opinion over the years. So, no, most people don't have the attention span. What it really takes is what you already do. Just take your microphone and record your stories. And then basically it's the hardest part of all is maintaining an interest over many years of doing it. And then you simply take the files, you upload them into an RSS, and then that RSS is distributed to the platforms that you know, like Apple and Spotify. And that part's the easy part. But the
start.
hardest part of all is maintaining and building enough of a character to figure out who you really are, you know. Personally, on one hand, on one humorous side, just to be silly and just to be supportive and kind and sweet, I would say, Bianca, you've you've been through enough damage. You don't need to ruin your life further by a podcast. You've been destroyed. No, please don't. You've destroyed your life. Your life has been enough of a mess. Are you sure? Are you sure you want the
I
punishment of
am.
podcasting? Yeah.
I actually am, because I want to interview, blind women in the community and just hear
Oh, that's
other
wonderful. No, go for it.
stories.
You know what? Let's get you started then. I mean, what I'm saying is there's a lot of negativity and a lot of nonsense that podcasters have to put up with. You get a lot of complaints. You get a lot of whiners and people that just complain all the time. So no, but I mean, if you really want to fit the niche of interviewing other blind women who and I've noticed it because I'm a blind man, so I do notice certain things about women. I've noticed that the blind women definitely are a lot more self-conscious about their blindness. There's a lot more of an identity issue there. So I think if you find the right guests who are willing to, talk about the identity of being a blind woman and how they've overcome certain things, I think if you do it the right way over a period of time, I think that would actually be good. But certainly you would need to discover again the most important part about anything is who's your audience, who's your audience, who's your audience, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very specific section, right? Women who are blind, mine is people who are blind, which is still a painfully small sector, over
Mm-hmm.
time. Now, over time it builds up and over time popularity grows and things like that. Yeah. But I support you 1,000 times over and we'll definitely get you connected later today, because after this, I have to go to work in about 45 minutes. But after that, and later on today, we'll definitely get you connected. I'm sure you already know Preston, but we'll get you into our WhatsApps and our groups, and we'll definitely get you into the podcast space because you certainly deserve it and you absolutely belong here. What else do you want to
I
know?
noticed like most of the interviews I have
Hmm.
done have always been male podcasters.
Okay, that's just weird.
I
Okay,
have
that's
not really
weird.
seen any blind or visually impaired
Hmm.
women podcasters.
I'll tell you why. I think a lot of women are actually very intimidated by podcasting. They view it as a masculine activity. Have you been on any? And I'll tell you about another podcast that you should be on for sure. Have you been on a guest? And I don't want to name drop. She does incredible work, but she's very different to me. Have you been on any podcast where you've been a guest on someone else's podcast and the host was a woman?
Mm,
No.
I have, but not in the blindness
Okay, who
community.
was it? I'm just curious because I'm thinking of someone whose podcast you should be on. I'm thinking of the person. Who is it? Whose podcast were you on?
Oof, I've been on quite a few. Yeah, they just weren't in the blindness community.
I know. Okay, let me
Um,
cut to the chase. Okay, let me just solve the equation. Have you ever been interviewed by a woman named Mary?
no.
No. Okay. Well, I'll explain that one later. I didn't mean to be so cryptic, but I'll explain that one later. There is someone who you should reach out to who would probably like to interview you on her podcast. And she's very different to me, but she also does incredible work for people with disabilities and is a huge podcaster and has a great persona and is also an author like you. So she would probably love to connect with you. Anyway. Yeah. So yeah, what else do you want to know, by the way? Mm-hmm.
Let's
Absolutely.
see. What else?
Sure.
Hmm. Hmm. Where are you located?
I don't really give that out on the podcast.
I
But
mean, just state-wise, not city.
no, no, thank you. No, thanks. I don't
Oh,
give that out.
no, not that either?
No, no,
Okay.
no, 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 not. It's a secret. It's a secret reason. It's a secret reason. That's not
Oh,
safe.
okay.
That's not safe. Whoa. Okay.
Um, hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I really don't have any other questions.
Well, Bianca, it's been an absolute honor and thrill to have you on the show. And again, what impresses me the most and what is really bizarrely amazing about you is your graceful nature. You're just able to talk about all this bad stuff that happened really gracefully. And then you're able to talk about your success really humbly. You know, that's really cool. I mean, you're really gifted. You're a really unusual and a special person to be able to convey your story in the way you do. And we here at Aaron's Opinion, we salute you and we support you and we want you to be a huge part of the Aaron's Opinion family. You need to understand that you are forever welcome in my podcast and my family here at Aaron's Opinion. And you'll be connected with listeners and other podcasters from all over the world who will love your story and love to connect with you and learn with you every day. So we're just so glad to have you. So Bianca, if someone wants to get in touch with all this interesting stuff that we've already covered, if someone wants to get in touch with you, how can you be reached apart from clicking the link in the description?
Okay, so I am known as Writer, Writer, Blaque, Blaque, Diamond, on all major social media platforms. So Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. So I do on my Facebook page, it's my page where I actually post my motivational quotes. I usually post about 3 times a week, motivational quotes that I create. So, have about maybe 2,900, people that follow, that page to get, and listen and see my different, motivational quotes and things like that. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, I am listed as Writer Blaque Diamond on all platforms.
Mm-hmm. Okay, are you following me on my Instagram at my platforms?
I was not aware you had Instagram or any of those
All
platforms.
right. All right. That's totally fine. We'll connect later today and we'll definitely, it's very important that we tag you when we do produce this and everything like that. You'll learn a lot more later today when we kind of reconvene. We'll take a little break here, but when we reconvene later, it will be a lot more clear to you exactly how I like to connect with people and things like that. But I'll send you more information. And it's been an absolute thrill, an absolute honor to have you in our Aaron's Opinion family.
Thank you
So
for
thank
having
you.
me.
You are forever welcome here. Absolutely. So until next time, click the link in the description and absolutely go buy her music and we'll connect that way too. And absolutely, as we like to say, Bianca, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy day to join us. And until next time, keep podcasting out there. And as we always like to say, help one person today, help 1 million people tomorrow.